Good morning, everyone. I am Isabella, and I am the Wednesday host for Planet Pathlings. This week we've taken on a huge topic of a witch's carbon footprint, and my topic is going to be on sustainable versus non-sustainable resources that we use in our practice. I'm going to limit this mainly to herbs because that is really a big topic, because generally people can we're more aware of certain the sustainability of certain things that we use, such as using the recycling and things like that in our homes. Now that is for any and everyone to do, to conserve our land by way of not putting things into the landfill, reusing things, all these different kinds of aspects of pollution or chemicals or anything like that. But I'm going to focus mainly on herbs because we tend to use a lot of herbs in our practice. And we also tend to think that wildcrafting is a better and witchy thing to do versus purchasing our herbs and stuff. While I do hold to the idea of wildcrafting being more in touch and in tune with what you're doing, what you're using in your practice, and it is great, we do have some things that people do not really think about. And that is the sustainability of what we are harvesting or purchasing, and creating the demand in the market that causes the overharvesting and extinction in a lot of cases of these not so renewable resources because of bad practices. So I wanted to start with a tale of basically three main herbs. Two we tend to use very heavily in our practices. A lot of people use sandalwood. A lot of people use what is known as boswellia now, but is in our practices more known as frankincense. And Goldenseal, which is a medicinal herb that we use a lot. All three are endangered or threatened in some areas of the world, and all three have alternatives that can be used in its place. So I'm going to start with Goldenseal because that's the medicinal plant, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Goldenseal and its history. Goldenseal is a woodland plant belonging to a family of Ranunculaceaceae or something to that effect. The plant is also known as eye balm, eye root, hydrocellus, orange root, turmeric root, and yellow root. Mainly found in the wild, Goldenseal grows to about a height of 1 foot and has an erect hairy stem and produces small greenish-white flowers that bloom in early spring and later into clusters of red berries. The plant gets its common name from its thick yellow rhizome, which is what is harvested and is the most potent part of the plant. Native Americans use Goldenseal as a multi-purpose medicinal plant. Cherokees used it to wash, to treat skin diseases, sore eyes, mixed powder made with the root with bear fat to use as an insect repellent. Other uses were diuretic, stimulant, and treatment of cancer. The Catawbas used the boiled root to treat jaundice, ulcerated stomach, colds, sore mouth, and also chewed the fresh dried root to relieve an upset stomach. The Kickapoo used Goldenseal as an infused water to treat eyes irritated by smoke caused by burning the prairie in the autumn. Caused by the burning prairie, they did not burn the prairie. Some Native American tribes used the plant as a source of natural yellow dye. Many early European settlers turned to Native American remedies to treat their ailments. In the 17th century, colonists in Virginia used the native plants such as ginseng, tobacco, sassafras, snakeroot, and Goldenseal, sanguinaria, and lobelia to treat medical problems. Goldenseal grows in the high open woods, usually on hillsides or bluffs with good drainage. It is found in native habitat from the northeast border of South Carolina to the lower half of New York, eastern to northern Arkansas, and southeast corner of Wisconsin, as well as Nova Scotia. Today, it is only found in abundance in Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and Kentucky, and parts of Illinois. It has been so over-harvested in the Appalachian Mountain Range, most of it is gone. Goldenseal has vanished from some of the historical locations, mostly because of loss of habitat. However, it has been cultivated in other places. Now, the importance of Goldenseal is that it is like an antibiotic affecting the body. And what it does is when you take it, it will strip bacteria, viruses, and other things out of the system. It works different than an antibiotic that we get from our doctor, which that antibiotic works to get into the cell and burst it. Goldenseal strips it away from the body. Instead of trying to kill it, it strips it away. So probably about 10 years ago, when we started seeing antibiotic resistant strep and staph, the CDC issued a statement saying that it's now treatment for the flesh-eating bacteria of MRSA and strep and staph that were antibiotic resistant. Their only line of defense was now to use either berberine from Goldenseal or barberry. Now that made it very critical because no antibiotic is very effective against MRSA. And most people who get MRSA actually die after, a lot of times, a lot of amputation. The importance of Goldenseal being able to be continued to be collected in the wild at that point was the fact that it was not able to be cultivated. It was resisting cultivation until they finally, in these last 10 years, have now managed to get Goldenseal actually cultivated, and now you can buy cultivated Goldenseal, which is actually a preferred way to do it, mainly because it preserves the mountain plant that is not particularly fast growing. I can remember even a scene in the, I can't remember the name of the show right now, where John Boy was. Hammonds wrote into his show, the grandpa and John Boy were up on a mountain and they were wildcrafting. And one of the things that he came across was Goldenseal, and he was wildcrafting it. And he specifically said, I can still hear Will Greer, who played the grandfather in that show, talk about leaving half of the plant intact. Take half, leave half. And they asked him why. And in his explanation was, so the plant will be here for your children and your grandchildren when they come along. So that one was probably in the late 70s, early 80s that he said that, and he was already talking about conservation of our plants. Really what he was doing was being a responsible wildcrafter, and that's sort of the same reason why, and I think we get a little confused. I know the Christian faith gets a little confused from when I was brought up in the Baptist church. It was give 10% to God. what they really meant by 10% in my viewpoint, and only my viewpoint, is that you save 10% so that you have it for the next year's harvest. So when the Bible was written and the principles of this 10% were put into play thousands of years ago, it wasn't a monetary world. It was a world done on trade. And harvesting food was a lot of that trade. You save 10% of your livestock. You save 10% of your seed from your harvest so that you have something to plant the next year. You suffer through if you don't have enough so that that 10%, the part you leave up to God, so that God can grow the fields again, so that goddess can produce again. The animals the same way. You leave 10% so that you have reproduction animals and that you can still continue to harvest meat and stuff. It was teaching you conservation and preparing for the next year, thinking ahead, long-term goals, and long-term survivability, not just eating everything up in one site and then moving to the next site to destroy it, leaving nothing but carnage in its wake. That is the importance of saving things like Goldenseal, which has now vanished from most of the Appalachian Mountain Range, which is a very sad day because it was very ingrained in all of the folk traditions, folk medicine, and all the other kind of stuff, which we believe as witches, or at least I do as witches and pagans, that this is how we were supposed to live, closer to earth, closer to the way God and Goddess intended. So this becomes a very important herb. And now look at it. In a day of modern medicine, the CDC has to come back to herbal uses because the defense against these flesh-eating bacterias and these antibiotic resistant bacterias is that you still take the antibiotic, and the antibiotic takes on the bacteria in a full frontal assault to penetrate its cell. But as it's doing so, the bacteria is starting to be able to overcome because it's been exposed to antibiotics long enough that it's learned to have a defense mechanism. That's why it's antibiotic resistant. But then if you add Goldenseal to it at that time, it doesn't have a resistance to it because Goldenseal doesn't try to kill it. It tries to strip it from the system and take it out through the kidneys where bacteria is all the time, and you urinate it out. So this is how Goldenseal works with our antibiotics in modern medicine to become more effective because of our overuse of chemicals to try to treat ourselves in modern medicine. So that is one thing about learning about sustainability. If we kill off our plants, berberine was not one of those items that they could chemically reproduce in a laboratory. Oftentimes what it is that modern medicine is, and they talk to you all the time about don't kill the rainforest because our next cure for cancer may be in there. What they're not telling you is they never intend to use the plant that's found in the rainforest. They plan to study its molecular structure and try to chemically reproduce that structure. The reason they do this is not because they're trying to save a plant, save the world, save a rainforest. They're doing this because they cannot patent a plant. They can't patent a plant, they can't patent a animal, they can't patent anything to that regard. All they can do is patent a process or patent a chemically reproduced item. This brings me to white willow, which was known as aspirin in its day, a Native American remedy grown from an aspen tree that they take the bark, they boil it down, and what's left in the container that they boiled it in was nothing but a white powder. That white powder was salicylic acid and is what we call aspirin. Except today we are not now legally able to say that white willow is aspirin. We can only say it has salicylic acid. This is because Bayer Aspirin Company patented the chemical reproduction of white willow and created aspirin. The difference between aspirin and white willow is that white willow doesn't eat your stomach and cause stomach bleeding, and won't cause you to free bleed all over your body if you start to have problems. So aspirin has a more toxic effect on the body because our bodies don't know how to handle chemically reproduced things the same way it knows how to do natural items that are grown in the wild, where our bodies are actually made to take in the things around us in our natural world. And these chemical reproductions, although similar, are not the same, and the body doesn't know quite how to handle it as well and comes with more severe side effects. So now this brings me to the case of Boswellia. Now, Boswellia is known as a medicinal herb because it is an anti-inflammatory. Boswellia is also known as frankincense and was one of the 3 gifts given to Jesus, since we're having this big controversy on red cups right now over Starbucks because of the season of Christmas. Well, frankincense is a very important herb. The reason the 3 gifts were given to Jesus was multiple faceted, but the reason frankincense was given was because it was an anti-inflammatory. It was also given along with myrrh, which was an antiseptic. 2 things that would help make sure that the child would survive until adult years. Inflammation and bacterial infections are the 2 main reasons that people die, even today. Inflammation sets up in the body and actually causes your heart disease and causes so many more things to go wrong. And that is the reason that controlling inflammation in the body becomes extremely important for survivability. This child was an important child born under a lot of different special star patterns that the ancients saw as particularly important. It's not that you have to even be a Christian to appreciate the fact the wise men were not Christian. They knew the child needed to be born and needed to survive because the child was going to do things. And that was due to star patterns, not because they wanted to become Christian. The reason that frankincense, it was a holy herb as well. It was used to burn in our incenses. It is a lot used in perfumes, and the tree is grown in areas where it is predominantly desert. The phenomena of these woodlands that produce these Boswellia trees, which is frankincense, is grown in a desert that tends to have heavy fog many months of the year. And this fog gives enough moisture to allow these trees to take root and grow. Now, today, frankincense is still harvested exactly the same way that it was done thousands of years ago. They go and they cut little slits into the tree and they harvest the resin. It takes about 3 to 4 years for this tree to grow big enough to actually be able to harvest the resin. The better resin, the clearer the resin, the better the resin is. The more yellow or reddish the resin is the more poor quality and is the resin that is scraped off the tree at the last bit. So when you're buying frankincense, that is one of the things to look for. If the frankincense is very clear, It is good quality, top of the line frankincense. Now, frankincense in a lot of places is okay, but there is a particular region in the world, and it is called Oman, and that is where the tree is heavily browsed by herbivores. Now, these herbivores are eating these trees, and it is causing a problem of poor regeneration because the herbivores are concentrating on the flowers, which turn into the seed, which grow new plants and keep this little woodland area regenerating. It is not due to our over harvesting, so it's not because we have endangered this plant. This was a plant that's actually been endangered by natural circumstances of the animals of the area have taken to munching a little too heavily on them, and is causing a problem in the area. But frankincense is also harvested from other areas of the world. So this is one that is threatened and is under conservation, but the taking of the resin from these trees do not harm the tree because they do it in the natural way it has always been done. So you might be careful where you buy your resin for frankincense, although this one, even though it's going to show up on a threatened list, it is not threatened by the harvesting of the frankincense resin. So this one is something that you can choose to still take from Oman to probably even support the efforts of saving the trees, because that would probably be how a lot of the money would be used in this case, is trying to preserve and regenerate the area of this woodlands. The next plant that I was going to talk about is sandalwood. Now, sandalwood is unique in that, first of all, you have two types of sandalwood. One is very endangered, and it oh, excuse me, is Indian sandalwood. Now, Indian sandalwood is a tree that is recent, has become endangered in recent years, and in an attempt to curb its possible extinction, the Indian government is trying to limit the exportation of sandalwood. The tree is already government controlled, and removal is prohibited whether on private or temple grounds until the tree is 30 years old. This has not stopped many poachers from cutting trees down as soon as authorities are not watching. Smuggling of sandalwood has created socioeconomic and law and order problems in the areas bordering the state of Tamil Nadu. If you try to buy pure frankincense oil right now, you will find that it's around $68 a bottle. At least last time I checked, and I have not checked as of yet. This was several years ago. It was $68 an ounce. This is predominantly why. Now, in India, sandalwood is primarily distributed on the Deccan Plateau. To the extent of its distribution is approximately 9,000 kilometers to that of, I'm not going to read all that, let's see. The heartwood of this fragrant tree is considered sacred and prized. The oil distilled from it, 60 kilograms of oil, can be extracted from a ton of heartwood. Not a very good ratio. It is used in the formulation of perfumes, lotions, soaps, and candles. Mashed into a paste, it is used as a folk medicine and spread on the skin to purify the complexion and heal rashes. It is dabbed on the forehead during religious ceremonies and burnt as incense in temples. The sandalwood industry employs thousands of people, especially in Mysore, known as Sandalwood City. Employees work in incense factories, rolling sandalwood paste on bamboo skewers. Craftsmen carve the hard yellow wood into boxes, combs, beads, statues of Hindu gods, and elephants. Trade in sandalwood dates back into the beginning of the trading of India. Realizing its value, the Sultan of Mysore declared it a royal tree in 1792. It continues to retain that place today, and no individual may own a sandalwood tree. Even if the tree grows on private land, it is owned by the government. However, an individual is entitled to receive 75% of its value as a bonus for growing and protecting the trees. Due to its high value and increased demand in internal and external markets, sandalwood prices have skyrocketed. The increase in price is partly due to a decrease in supply during the 1930s and 50s, or 1930s through the 50s. In 1950, 4,000 tons of heartwood were produced, and in 1990, this was down to 2,000 tons. Increase in demand can be attributed to the popularity of aromatherapy and trends in the cosmetic industry towards natural products. Legislation by the Indian government to protect the sandalwood tree has been inconsistent, and as the sandalwood trade represents a significant area of export to the U.S. and the Middle East. Exports to the U.S. are prominently for the use in perfume industry. The oil is the excellent base and fixative for other high-grade perfumes. By itself, it is mild, long-lasting, sweet perfume, but the industry finds that it can blend well with other perfumes and does not impart its fragrance when used as a base. There are several hundred products that use sandalwood oil. Of the traditional areas in the Southeast Asia where sandalwood is found, only India has made a strong effort to create plantations, which are continually harvested. Most of the production is earmarked for the extraction of oil, and the rest is used for carvings. In Australia, much of the remaining strands of their protected strains are protected, and with the rest auctioned off to the highest bidder. Few sandalwood trees are left in the Indonesian archipelago, Indonesian something. While relatively recently discovered, supplies in Papua New Guinea and the South Pacific are in danger of being squandered by local villagers who cut them before they are mature. The scent of sandalwood is stronger and the value of the wood much higher and the longer one waits to harvest the tree. A tree is considered not worth cutting down until it's at least 60 years old. Although trade in Indian sandalwood is officially restricted, smuggling remains a serious threat to the tree. And in May of 1993, the biggest and costliest manhunt in Indian history was launched to track down the leader of the Indians' major sandalwood smuggling ring, Veerapan. Approximately 600 Border Security Force troops were used to back up the Special Police Task Force, which has been combing the jungles of Tamil Nadu and the Karnataka states. The notorious Veerapan carries a 4 million rupee, that's 132,000 bounty on his head, and has been on the run from police since killing his first elephant at the age of 14. He claims to have killed 2,000 elephants for their ivory before entering the more lucrative sandalwood trade. He was once arrested in 1986 but escaped from police custody and has since embarked on several killing sprees. The worst was in April of 1993 when 21 members of a police posse were blown up with landmines after Veerapan lured them into an ambush. Always dressed in olive fatigues, Veerapan is constantly on the move and is said to approximately 60 camps in 6,000 kilometers of jungle near his birthplace of Gobinatham, 75 miles southeast of Mysore. So you can see how intense these situations can be, and our purchase of the wrong sandalwood actually creates this. The perfume industry, I'm sure, not taking it even for its unique scent, but only taking it as a fixative oil. This is one of the things that we can do for sustainability efforts for our things that we deem sacred. I love sandalwood, but I now make sure that it is the cheaper sandalwood oil, so it is not as high grade. You can either get it as a blend in your 1 ounce thing. It's still expensive, but that blend means that it's got little less than half of the sandalwood oil in it, but the other one is a I believe it's red sandalwood, but you'll know by the price difference which is the one that is not endangered. Of course, the other one is better, and so you just have to use your better judgment. But in not purchasing certain perfumes that use sandalwood as its fixative oil would be something that you could do to reduce the price, and in reducing the price, you stop people like this Virapon, which is really, he's like a guerrilla warfighter. He's killing elephants, he's killing tigers, he's killing, which leads me to, another thing in a minute on animals that are also killed and harvested for body parts that are used in magical amulets. So another thing that we have to beware of. Now, I'm going to list in the down bar several places where you can go to find statuses on certain plants, histories of these things, and whatnot. But there is an herb company called Frontier Herbs, and I'm sure other herb companies do this as well. Frontier Herbs lists herbs that they refuse to carry because of the status, and list the year even that they quit providing it or producing it, or actually say that they never carried it because of its status. Now, this is a short list, but there are thousands of plants endangered across the world, and I encourage you to go on to one of my sites, which is the USDA's endangered plants and endangered species, actually, but it lists plants and herbs, and you can actually go by your own state so that you make sure that you're not wildcrafting something that is also a problem. Lady slipper root banned for sale by an organization that was called the AHPA.org, which is the National Trade Association and the voice of herbal products industry. Lady slipper has, and what they do here when they list the herb that is banned, they actually give you substitutes. And you'll find that these substitutes are like, there's 1,000 different substitutes for any one of these herbs, so there's no reason to be using these plants until we can bring them back. The substitutes of lady slipper are valerian, skullcap, cramp bark, and black cohosh. Bathroot populations were limited, and so it reproduces slowly. Shepherd's purse grows rampantly wild everywhere. Shepherd's purse, raspberry, mullein, a weed that grows everywhere. Yarrow, black cohosh. Then true unicorn root. It's very rare to find it anywhere. Peppermint and chamomile. Now, how easy is it to grow peppermint? It'll take over everything. Wild ginseng, which is known as American ginseng. Wild populations are continuing to decline in spite of controls due to overharvesting of people. There are now cultivated roots and leaves, so this is an herb that is more, it is actually better for the herb itself if you just buy it in bottles from your local companies that sell herbs, because the wild-crafted herb is endangered. False unicorn is becoming very rare. Chase tree and Don Quai are its substitutes. Wild golden seal, greatly reduced, but now is cultivated. So cultivated golden seal is what you need to ask for. The list goes on and on about these herbs. There are many ways to find substitutes for every herb that is endangered. But again, look into why they're endangered. Things such as frankincense, it's not actually due to the harvesting of the resin from that tree. That is kind of like harvesting our maple syrup from the maple trees. It doesn't harm the tree to harvest the syrup. The trees stay in good health while doing that, as long as it's done with the way it's always been done, that survives the trees. Now I'm going to go to a little bit about endangered animals. This video is getting long, so I'm not going to do a whole lot about it. But there are a lot. This is not just about plants. This is about also animals. These animals, birds, fish, all kinds of things, there are a lot of them that are in danger because we're over harvesting them, and we're over harvesting them or killing off their habitats. So the tiger is one that comes to mind. I, being born in the year of the tiger, and have always had big cats walk beside me since I was a little girl, is my totem animal. The majestic tiger in all of its majesty, they're gorgeous. I mean, why would you want to kill it for its penis? But South Asian men do frequently kill tigers just for the penis, and they think that it is going to sustain their virility so that they can continue to get it up and continue to overpopulate Southeast Asia. This is a tragedy that an animal so majestic would be killed for something so stupid. There are lots of things that you can do to get a virility charm. Lots of herbs that actually are proven to affect it. Lots of medications that you can do that will sustain it. So there is no reason to ever kill a tiger for this reason. They already have shrinking habitats. They already have all kinds of other issues. But this is a magical purpose that this animal is killed for, and for no other reason. Then you go to birds like the bald eagle and the red-tailed hawk. Now, the bald eagle became endangered due to DDT used by farmers before we knew how harmful DDT was in the food supply. And what was happening was the rain washes off the water gets contaminated in the rivers go through to the oceans, and we have a big problem. The same DDT poisoning that took out the eagles because of when they laid their eggs, the eggs were too soft-shelled, and the egg was not viable, and that led to the destruction of our bald eagles. That meant that you could, because the bald eagle was so endangered, the only ones that could hold on to a bald eagle feather, even if you find a bald eagle that's laying dead on the ground, it is illegal to harvest its feathers. If you do, you are supposed to turn them in to the federal government. You cannot have them in your possession. You cannot sell them. You cannot trade them. Native Americans can, or as the last I looked, they could still have possession because they were sacred artifacts to their culture. But Native Americans rarely would kill a bald eagle just to harvest the feathers. Now, they may have back in the day when bald eagles were plentiful. I'm not sure how they made all their beautiful headdresses and the smudge fans and stuff, but they held the eagle as sacred, so I doubt that they just went around killing all the eagles that they could see. But that doesn't mean that there is not a Native American out there that might have killed a bald eagle, as it's been on the endangered species list. But you can always have one person going rogue, whereas the overwhelming Native American tribes did not harm an animal that they deemed sacred to themselves. It is a very powerful totem animal in Native American societies, and I do not think that they were running rampant, killing these animals just for the feathers. So, although, like I said, you might have one rogue bad apple that might have been doing something, but for the most part, Native Americans were using their their things very wisely. And if we had kept up with Native American traditions on how we harvest and how we use animals and plants, we would not probably be in the situation we are today if we had used their principles and practices from our first encounters with Native American. I have a lot of Native American in my family, and I am just devastated that I lost most of my heritage. That my mother is almost about 90 to 98% Native American in her bloodlines. So these are just a little bit of ways. The red-tailed hawk is also the same. The red-tailed hawk feathers are also not supposed to be found in anyone's possession either. They were endangered as well, and they are starting to come back too because of efforts due to conservation. So we need to keep these things in mind when we are picking up things. And I haven't even started on the aspect of our gems that we use, the crystals and things, and just keep in mind that even those kind of things like the blue tanzanite, I believe it was, that came from Afghanistan, it funded the Taliban. By us buying it, and the heroin, that also, it was from the heroin trade and the tanzanite trade actually funded the Taliban and all of the destruction that it did on that country. So just keep these things in mind, research a little bit. It's easy to Google anything, and all you have to do is pop in something, and then you kind of know a background of it, and then you have a better way of understanding whether you should wildcraft it or whether you should purchase it, or whether maybe you should just walk away and find a substitute. And Google will help you find that substitute as well. So I just want y'all to have a very blessed day. I hope this video was informative. It is extremely important. I probably could have talked hours and upon hours on this subject because I just touched a very small tidbit of it. So y'all have a very blessed day.